Well, we've made it through. It is the morning after. The dust hasn't even settled. When it does, here are some things you can anticipate. Get your coffee. I expect this will be a different video than many of you might be used to on my channel, but this is me trying to make sense of what's happening in the world at this moment post the 2022 midterms. I am, as I've said before, a bit of a political junkie, a news junkie, though I don't talk a lot about politics because I've learned a long time ago that if you want to instantly turn half of the people that listen to you against you, then go ahead and talk about politics. I think that the political conversations that we often have, they require far more explanation and discussion than we give to them. They require that kind of explanation so that people really understand the positions that you and I hold, but we don't live in a culture that does discussion and explanation very well. We live in the headline and soundbite culture, a culture that is always looking for a reason to tear one's opponent apart. Just so you know, that's really rather anti-Christ behavior. I'm sure that that'll probably upset some. Be that as it may, I know that my unwillingness to take more strong, vocal political stances drives some people crazy, but I try as hard as I can to be publicly political neutral. My aim is to help people make sense of political things by seeing them through the lens and worldview of the Bible, through the lens and worldview of theology and the faith of Christ. I'm not always great at that, but that's certainly my goal. I am a pastor. I'm not a politician. And I think that our lives should be far more informed by the Bible as Christians and by faith and theology than by political ideology. All that said, I am a Protestant Christian pastor in America. I am a conservative, but I'm not party affiliated. As far back as I can remember during all of my adult life as a voter here in the US, I've never been party affiliated. But that said, I am politically conservative, especially on moral issues and very much on fiscal issues. But I tend to be rather open to pragmatic approaches to a lot of the political issues, which makes some of my more conservative friends think that I might lean left. I don't think that I do, but I have been accused of such. Anyway, as I shared a couple days ago, we are constantly told that the current election cycle, whatever election cycle we are in, is the most important election of our lifetime, and that democracy and the republic are in danger. That rhetoric has been extra loud the last several months. I think that these are consequential times. I am truly concerned about what is happening in the world, especially when geopolitically people are saber rattling with nuclear weapons. I have 4 kids, and I want them to have a peaceful and joyful future. And while I'm long on optimism, that is, someday Jesus will rule and reign in his glorious kingdom, I am concerned about some things in the near term. I find it interesting that literature and entertainment for the last half of the 20th century was primarily of the kind of pre-apocalyptic sort. This made sense in the Cold War era. We lived through the Terminator era when we told ourselves that we were working hard to avoid the apocalypse. But in the 21st century, post 9/11, our media is more like Hunger Games and Divergent. It's post-apocalyptic. The narrative in our culture is post-apocalyptic. The bomb of Bush or Obama or Trump or Biden has blown off, and we have to try to figure out what to do to keep it from getting worse. That's kind of the mindset and view of our time. For those who are on the left, after yesterday's midterm elections, things are bleak, and the doomsday clock is closer than ever to total catastrophe for them. So what can we expect to see in the wake of the 2022 midterms? I've kind of thought through some of this quite a bit, war-gamed it out, if you will, and here's what I think that we can expect. I think that the left is going to reorient away from President Biden. He and his direct administration partners will probably not be the leaders of the party in the 2024 election cycle. So now the Democrats are going to have to figure out how to distance themselves from a first-term sitting president. Some of President Biden's cabinet will probably soon resign. I'm thinking primarily of presidential hopefuls like Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. There will probably be others who will also resign, but there certainly will be some who will need to get distance from the administration if they have political ambitions in the future. Additionally, I think that we can expect that either President Biden will bow out graciously from the 2024 run by his own choosing, or the left in his party will scapegoat him. Either the president will fall on the sword himself, or there will suddenly be problems that begin to surface from establishment Democrats and within the media concerning the potential problems involving the president's connections to the business dealings of his son, Hunter. As far as Democrats are concerned, it will be something like this. They'll say, Mr. President, you've accomplished some great things in the last 2 years and the 4 decades before that. Make that your legacy and bow out graciously, or find your legacy tarnished by issues that are going to begin to trickle into the news headlines around Hunter. So that's on the left. What about the right side of the aisle? On the right, Donald Trump will announce plans for his 2024 race for the presidency. Apparently, his team is planning to do that as early as next week. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is presumed to primary him, but that will be a challenge. DeSantis is obviously younger and has political ambitions beyond Florida, but if he primaries Trump, then DeSantis kind of signs his own death warrant. Trump has already begun to fire shots across the political bow of DeSantis. He's nicely, if you will, reminded DeSantis and others that he will tear them apart with smears if they primary him. Donald Trump is a force of nature, politically and in like every single way. He annihilates his opponents. And the media, although they they hate Trump, they will help him against DeSantis or any other contender because the left would rather run against Trump than DeSantis or any other person. What about Vice President Harris? Well, Vice President Harris has probably no political future beyond VP. Her title will probably forever be Madam Vice President, unless somehow in some crazy turn of events, which would probably be the narrative, she gets put forward as like a SCOTUS nominee. So if President Biden is out for 2024 and Harris is not the viable contender to Trump, then who's next? Well, clearly the governor of my state of California, Gavin Newsom, is positioning himself for a run, and he has the look and he has the power brokers behind him to probably roll that into a possible national bid for the nomination of his party, although his record in California has not exactly been stellar. Then, of course, you have individuals like Amy Klobuchar, who is certainly going to try to run, and I'm sure that Secretary Buttigieg will try to run as well. Hillary Clinton, as they say in the South, could make a run as well. Bernie Sanders, he's a bit old, but he has a lot of people who like him, so don't count him out. All that to say, more chaos is coming. And it is all going to be in the midst of continued economic turmoil and headwinds and the threat of war in Europe between Russia and Ukraine extending beyond the borders of Ukraine, and in Asia with China and Taiwan. These are crazy times, and the craziness does not appear to be leveling off anytime soon. I am not a prophet, never have pretended to be. I'm just a pastor who looks at the things that are going on in the world, looks at what the scriptures have to say, and kind of spitballing here at what I think is going to happen next. Nothing better to do during a time like this than to pray diligently. Christians are to be salt and light in the world, a restraining influence in the world, a restraining influence by our prayers, by our proclamation of truth and the gospel, and by our public witness. Notice that I didn't say that we are to be a restraining influence by our politicking. We are a restraining influence by our prayers, our proclamation, and our public witness for the truth, for the gospel, for the kingdom of God. And when we focus our attention on politicking and fail at prayer, proclamation, and public witness, you get what we have right now. The restraints are removed and chaos ensues. Something to think about. We'll see you next time.